And we can now get started. Uh, let me restart. The reason that we haven't met until now is because I didn't have any new information to share with you. And I have a few things that I want to share with you now, and one thing that I want to start to demo, even though I probably won't be able to get all the way through it. So today is our first meeting of the winter spring time period of the year. Okay, the first thing that I want to talk about is about the news from LibLine. First of all, with version 6.0, the software name is changing to Bibliovation. And when the software is installed, if you don't have your own logo already in your discovery layer, you will be seeing the regular the B that shows up in your location bar if you have the offline circ installed. Okay, so just be aware of that. It really doesn't change anything within the software. Everything that you use currently is still in the software, and there are some new things that are being added in. Since the software version has now switched to 6.0, Bibliovation 6.0, I'm starting a new list of documentation links. There is a new one out there for the Bibliovation 6.0 release notes. Let me click on that and I'll show you what's in there. Right now, there's not a whole lot. It's basically in January, this is when the version number has been changed over. But you can see already that there are some new granular permissions, a few new changes to the system preferences, and some differences or some additions to the Get It software. Right now, they don't have new features or enhancements or anything else in here, so it's kind of easy to keep up with it at this point. Well, I'm sorry, I should keep going. I only looked at the first page, so forgive me for that. Okay, but there are some new things in here. I haven't, as you can tell, looked through them all yet. I was just made aware of them a few days ago. So you can click on that link in the agenda in order to get to that list of descriptions. I don't have any date when version 6.0 will be released to anyone. I can tell you that version 6.0 is currently in the Waldo sandbox. So if you see things on the list that you want to check out, you can look into, or you can look in the Waldo sandbox. And just so that you know, the URL has changed. I don't have it on the wiki page yet, but I will add that on here. With the advent of the Bibliovation name, the URL is changing. And the way that Patrick explained it to me is that they can only have 3 separate pieces in the URL. So the library name, it used to be followed by a period and then sandbox.kohalibrary.com. Now it is the library symbol, a hyphen, the word sandbox, in this case, the word sandbox.bibliovation.com. So that's something to look forward to, but I will document that on this page of the URL, plus I will send it out in a email message to the Waldo support mailing list so that you all have the new URL, and also I'll include the the username and the password for you to use to sign on. That's one big change already in the new year. Jane hasn't notified me yet that any of the other documents have been updated. So the only ones that are available are the ones for version 5.20, which is okay because most of you are still on 5.20. But be aware that that is something that that has changed. If you want to have the access to the version 5.20 URL, I'm sorry, release notes, I will make sure I get that URL back in here. I took it out just for the purpose of this meeting, but I will include that again. Okay, before I go on, any questions so far about the name change to the software and the change to the Waldo Sandbox URL? Okay, I don't see any, so we will go on. Now for a little bit of update information about the LAK 5.20 version. We have one library that has updated to 5.20, and I would like to first say that there are a couple of things that that in testing I didn't run into, but in production, Marymount Manhattan has run into. You're here, are you willing to, I didn't ask you before this meeting, but are you willing to talk a little bit about the couple of things that have been reported to the support center? If you can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. The main thing we couldn't do was what you already know about, was run reports, but was fixed quickly though.
Yeah.
That was the main thing.
You all can look at the support center. I just switched over to it, and what Jason told you about is this particular report. The
right.
What it ended up being was that the server wasn't in sync with the database, so that just had to be done. But we did get a message back from Louise who said we had to change our database name, and we weren't sure what that was. So I asked Jane about it, and she let me know that there was just a miscommunication. We weren't using the same words to identify the same thing.
Oh, okay.
There is also a problem that Brian has entered, and that's about the patron load file, and he is doing what is good to do for everyone, and that is test against the sandbox before you load into the production version. But I'll let you look at these, but basically this was a problem with a new field that was, I think it was a new field. No, this is something different, sorry. But there was this one, the patron load test. There was a lengthy error, which actually is one of the plaque errors from years ago. Okay, and this is just so you can see that there is this rather lengthy support center request in here. This also has been taken care of, so once you start working with version 6.0 in our 5.20 in your sandboxes, you will run into the same thing, so just be sure to read those support center reports so that you have an idea of what the issue was. The software should already be fixed on that, but just in case it isn't, be aware that there might be a patron load problem. I know that since the semester has begun for all of you, that it is something that you probably don't want to consider at this very moment, but I would encourage you to set up an upgrade date with LibLine. It's as easy as just entering a support center request asking to be updated. It's a good idea to identify a couple of dates that may work for you and include the time that your library closes on those days. There are quite a few new features that would be useful for you all to have, so I would encourage you to do that as soon as you can. The first time you might have an opportunity would be during spring break, which I know, at least for me, sitting here in minus 17-degree weather is hard to believe, but it will come up sooner than we think. So keep that in mind. The next thing I have on the agenda is batch edit items. That's a new feature that's, I'm sorry, it is a newly revised feature of the batch item edit that we had before. Let me start from the beginning on this. This is a tool that has been available in the past. We had two versions of it in LAK. One was a modify option, and the second was an edit option. And depending on which one you had selected in your system preference, you would then be led to the appropriate tool. Since it's a tool, we need to start at the Tools menu, and the batch item editor is in the first column. Now, the version I'm showing you is one that is beyond, is the first test version that's available in version 6.0. So it won't be in your sandboxes, but it will be in the Waldo sandbox, and that's why I'm going to make sure you get the URLs. I'm still learning about this because it is new, because it has been revamped. It is going to give some possibilities that we did not have before. Okay, there are two options. The first option that we see here is, let me go to the system preference so you can see what the global system preference is set to. It's under cataloging and our batch edit or modify options. In this case, we have it under modify. The modify option gives you more opportunities to create a list of items that need to be edited than the edit option does. Let me first change this to edit so that you can see what this one looks like. Okay. Let me check. I'm going to the Bibliovation demo. I've been flipping back and forth between the two. Okay, maybe there is no difference now. I'll do some checking up, and the next time we meet, I'll have some better information on the batch item edit list. But what this is a multi-step process now. As near as I can have figured out, you have to have a list that includes the barcodes of what you're looking here. There is an option to edit that list. So I'm going to click on this one. And I'm going to click on View Details. Okay, this tells me what is in the list, the barcode number, the title, and the home branch. Now, in this one, I changed the home branch from whatever it was in the record before to WLD, and this is a notification that it's been processed. If I go to click on the Process tab, it identifies options for us. The first one is that if you are going through a lot of different items for changes, like you were changing a whole collection from one location to another location, and you wanted to make sure you did it all in one step, you could tell it to skip some items that you have that are either on hold, checked out, maybe course reserves, and some of these other options here. And that will allow you to process the list without having to page through a list and click the ones that you want to select rather than let it process a big file. And then the additional actions, it says here, run as a batch job asynchronously. To me, that means it would process it offline, but the pieces that I've been working with, I have just gone ahead and unclick this and run them immediately. Okay, so what I had set up to process in this particular set is I wanted to change the item type from book, which it was before, to 2-hour reserve. And because I only had one item in, it got processed, and I don't need to do this again. Now I can, after I process it, I can choose to save the settings, or I can cancel out of it. I'm just going to cancel out of it for this time, or for right now, because I want to show you the rest of these. The other one, the next button is download the report, and this will give you the option of downloading either as a CSV file or as Excel. Because there's only one item, this file processes quickly, and I will wait for it to open. It tells the list name, which record was processed, the item ID, the title, and the fact that it processed. The one thing that that I don't see on here is that it doesn't tell me what it processed. So I don't know that that the Koha item type was changed from something to something else. And until I learn more about this, I'm not going to consider this a problem. It's just something that I need to become familiar with this particular tool so I know what happens here. So I'm going to go back to the list. And you can see I have a few different sets that I have created. I was trying to figure out how to do a batch report on all holds, and because I didn't find any, I ended up not working with that. But in the Academy Awards one, this doesn't give you a whole lot of information in terms of the title. So right now, since I'm just trying to figure out how it works, I'm not too concerned about that. What I am trying to learn about is how to create the list from a search or from an SQL report or from an upload. So I know those are all options. So far, I've just been working with the enter text. And what I have found from search is when I create a list name, such as, let's say, pets, okay, the item field options that are available are basically all the item fields that are in your records. So if I select everything that has a public note, I can either say exactly matches my value, contains my value, or is empty. I'm going to not save this. I'm going to cancel out of this because this is part of what I have to still learn about. And because the documentation isn't done, it's going to be just a matter of guessing at it. But this will allow you to create a search where if you know everything in one topic is going to move from one, that you want to fix some field in all of them, the records, you can do it with one search. The one from SQL, when you create a new list from SQL, the first thing that it asks, that it's going to ask for is the report that you want to run. So I've tried running a couple where I know I get item records that come back, and it hasn't actually worked all that well for me because I'm not sure what I'm doing. But okay, this particular list, let me go into edit list here. I used a saved search, which you get to from going to the more drop down to save searches. So if you have a saved search where you have done some modifying and addition to the cart, to the records that you have saved to a cart and then saved into a saved search, that is something that can be a basis for your your batch edit of items. Again, this one I have not actually done any processing with this particular file, but if I chose to do so, I would first in my edit list select the titles that I wanted the items to be edited, and after I had selected those titles, I would then go to the process button to either modify or delete items. This is going to take a little bit of time, I think, to figure it out. And the last information I had from Jane on this was that they did some quick testing in their office, and they said the initial runs looked good, but they don't have any of the documentation ready. And I think until the documentation is ready, I think this is going to be a little bit more difficult to understand and figure out. It looks to me like what they tried to do is to compress all of the different various ways of batch editing items into one tool. And I think that's why we have this way that it looks. Let me come back up here. Okay, and in here it says the previous code lines had a total of 4 different versions of a batch editor. There are permissions that go with this. Let me see if there's any. No, that's pretty much all that's in there on that. None of the options to tell us how to use it. So as things change over the next few weeks or months, I will be sure to show you a little bit better demo of what the batch item edit list is and how it works. Right now in version 5.20, what the two options that we had available in LAK are still available. And since nobody is on version 6.0 yet, you'll get a view of how the software changes over time, and hopefully it will change quickly. Okay, for those who are who have participated in the Code Fusion meetings, there is another one scheduled for February 19th. There also was a meeting on January 4th, and during that meeting, it was basically just to touch base with all of the participants to see where they were. The testing for the public libraries is going along, and the latest that I've heard from South Central is that they have basically done and continue to do a lot of testing, but they have identified their issues and have met with LibLarm about them. They have a combination of some wording changes that they would like to have done, which they probably can do through the discovery layer, depending on what it is they want done. And they have some new features that they also are interested in working with, are interested in having done. Some of those new features are applicable to the authorities module, and Patrick does remember that when we get to the authority, or when they work on the authorities things, that we have some authorities enhancements that we want to also have done, and we want to make sure that what they plan for us and for South Central work together rather than are diametrically opposed. So at some point, there will be some specification that either we'll write or that we'll review and respond to. I don't have any timeline for that yet. I just know that it's going to happen sometime between now and June. That's pretty wide time range. So as I find out more about that, I will definitely share that information with you. And to remind you, the enhancements are down here. There are two of them that we have for the authorities. Okay, are there any questions, any comments, anything that you would like to hear more about? Okay, seeing none, the next meeting that is scheduled is for February 14th. As I send out the agendas on the Waldo support mailing list, I will include each time the connection information so that you don't have to try and keep track of the message with the information. So we'll talk again on February 14th. Thank you all.